Okay, so what does the cancellation of Keystone XL mean for Alberta, the bigger picture in particular? Richard Masson is with the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary and joins us now. Mr. Masson, thank you for joining the program. There was certainly a degree of inevitability, I think, but perhaps you could paint the bigger picture about what this means, not just for the Alberta taxpayer, but for the oil and gas sector in particular.
Well, I mean, it's a very big disappointment for the oil sector. The refineries on the U.S. Gulf Coast are designed to process heavy oil. Canada has the world's third largest reserves of heavy oil, and we produce it very effectively. So this pipeline was viewed as a crucial link between the supply and the market. Unfortunately, after all the environmental work that was done, years of hearings, the presidential permit being granted, it was pulled as one of the first acts of the Biden administration. And so we end up in a situation now where those refineries are still looking to get our oil, and we have fewer ways to get it there. That can result in lower prices for Canadian oil, less investment, fewer jobs, less taxes, less royalties. So, there's still work being done on replacement of Enbridge Line 3, which can help get better market access, Trans Mountain expansion, which can also get some oil into the U.S. market. Mm-hmm. But Keystone XL was viewed as part of the long-term future.
The cancellation of the Keystone XL permit is actually the subject of a lawsuit in the United States right now. Florida, Alaska, among many states and groups that have taken the Biden administration to court on this. But the fact that the Alberta government is saying, okay, we're just taking the hit on this and moving on, is the signal that they believe there is no coming back?
My guess, and I'm not exactly in the middle of this, is that there's contractual triggers that probably happened. So Alberta was on the hook for $1.3 billion through its investment. Some of the big oil producers were collectively on the hook for more than $400 million they had signed up for. TransCanada, TC Energy, needed to be able to clear its books as well. So I expect that they all came to the conclusion that, given the contractual terms that they were under, it's best to put a pin in this and move on. I don't know that that will preclude them from pursuing lawsuits as they move forward.
This investment was made as the U.S. presidential election cycle had begun, it was clear that there was opposition among multiple Democratic candidates and among Democrats in particular. Would you say it was a wise investment in that moment? Right now, we can make the judgments we want, but the investment was made at that time. Do you think it was a wise investment at that time, knowing the headwinds politically that were being faced?
Well, the challenge of trying to we have a very integrated market in North America. If you think about the Midwest market around Chicago, it's extremely dependent on oil from Alberta. The Line 3 replacement is part of that, but Enbridge's pipeline system brings 2.5 million barrels a day from Western Canada into central U.S., Eastern Canada, and down into the southern states. So we're very dependent on all of this. And the idea that a single pipeline will be disallowed because of something, that doesn't affect all the other pipelines is a bit hard to grasp, right? So if you believe at the end that science, engineering, regulatory practices will prevail, then this looks like it would have been a good pipeline, a sound pipeline, newest technology, all those things. Unfortunately, politics often gets in the way of some of these decisions, and that's what happened to this pipeline. So I think you can see politics on both sides of this, with Alberta trying to push it forward through its investment, get the construction started, and of course politics with the U.S. administration when it came in.
I want to step back a bit and not just look at Keystone XL, but look at the environment that Alberta in particular, but Canadian energy in Western Canada has faced. The increasingly organized and coordinated opposition that has been increasingly effective and increasingly heard on both sides of the border. Lots of it over environmental concerns, environmental pressure. And now I see a very significant announcement, or what is being described as a significant announcement by the five major players in the oil sands today. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, this was a big announcement in my view this morning. the big companies, so Cenovus, Suncor, Imperial, Canadian Natural Resources, and MEG, between those 5 companies, they now control 90% of the production from the oil sands. And what they did today is say they're going to work together and with the Alberta government and the federal government towards net zero by 2050. So I don't think you would find any industry in any other country that's taken such a strong stand. They're really focused on things like carbon capture and storage as a means of reducing the emissions from producing the oil. And so if you just think about the context, we have an industry that's been very innovative. They've reduced their greenhouse gas intensity by about 20% over the last 10 or 12 years. There's forecasts even by the Canadian Energy Regulator that we'll see another 20% reduction over the next 10 or more years. And so we're getting better. We have a lot of track record of getting better. And now they've committed to meet the goals that the federal government has set and that the Paris Agreement has set of net zero by 2050. In that environment, you'd say, well, Keystone XL probably would have been a good pipeline because, the oil that's going to come from the oil sands is competitive on a greenhouse gas basis with other sources of oil. And it certainly has other merit because it's a very secure source from a friendly country. So this is part of the challenge. It's a very dynamic environment right now. Making these 20 or 30-year investments can be very challenging because the winds blow back and forth very quickly.
We've only got about a minute left here, but I briefly want to ask you, that is a commitment, net zero by 2050. It's 29 years away from now. What is the environment? What is the landscape going to look like? And it's a huge question in a short amount of time. But in that short amount of time, what will things look like even 10 years from now with increasing emphasis on environmental vehicles from automakers and what have you?
We have such a huge challenge in front of us globally. 100 million barrels a day of oil is consumed right now. We need to move that down into the range of 25 to 50 over time. We're going to use some oil for things that aren't easily converted to electric cars, for example. And it's, in the meantime, Canada right now produces 3 million barrels a day from the oil sands. We can be part of that long-term future for the oil that gets produced if we can produce our oil environmentally and effectively. Canada has right now the highest ESG, environment, social governance score of any country. And so we have to work hard to make sure that we have our place in the future of the oil industry as we transition from where we are to where we need to be to meet our environmental goals.
Richard Masson, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate the opportunity, David. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.